Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We can just get everyone to mute your lines as we get started, and Steve will lead us off.
Yeah, well, thank you, Anna. And yeah, just to reiterate, if everybody could here at the onset, please do mute your phone or your computer system, and we'll open things up certainly for questions and comments later in the program. Great way to start the Monday morning here in Washington, D.C. And good morning to those that are joining from Washington or the United States. And good afternoon to those that are out in Iraq or elsewhere in the region. We're delighted to have you with us today for what's really the second installment in an area that the U.S. Iraq Business Council would like to focus more on, and that is that intersection of education and kind of career life development, training, and business. And we're really delighted to have with us today an all-star panel that builds off of our first webinar, which brought in, and really that was more at a Middle East wide level with experts from American universities in Cairo and Baghdad. Today, we'll really focus down into Iraq, and particularly looking to get thoughts and ideas, and really to hear what some of our partners and panelists are actively doing to look at addressing the skills gap and empowering essentially the private sector to be able to do more and really grow as we look to the future. In addition to our panelists, I do want to say we're delighted to have, our structure with our U.S. Iraq Business Council. We have two co-chairs, one represented today by Hillwood HK and Energy, Matt Zeiss, our other co-chair, Baker Hughes, and then we have our board and our corporate companies and small business members as well. And this is one of those areas that we've heard from companies across the range that are doing things in Iraq, and not just in terms of size of the company or their level within the council, but across the breadth of the sectors that we see U.S. companies engaging in, that there's an appetite, for this discussion, but more importantly for action and actual progress in this area. So we're really eager to hear from our panelists today about what they already have going on, what the future might hold, what are some of the plans and priorities from their perspective, and then look to see where we can take the conversation after this webinar. Our panelists today were joined by Christine Vandertoorn, and right as she was going for that slug of coffee, as I was right before I came on camera, deservingly so. And Christine, obviously well known to the audience. She is the president and founder of the Iraq Fund for Higher Education in Baghdad Business School. She will then we will turn things over to IREX's Senior Technical Advisor and Program Director, Dr. Lori Mason, and she's joined by her colleague, of course, Stanley Courier. And then closing it out and batting cleanup, we have from the U.S. Department of State, the Deputy Economic Chief in the Office of Iraq Affairs, Matt Amatrano. Again, I think somebody all of our panelists are well known, not only to the Iraq file, but to the companies that are participating today. So we'll hear from each of them, and then I'm going to roll it over to my colleague, Anna Burris, manager for the U.S. Iraq Business Council, who will then moderate a discussion, and we'll open it up and hear questions and comments from our participants. So with that, let me turn it over to Christine, our first panelist speaker. Christine?
Thanks so much, Steve and Anna, for hosting us. I really appreciate it. And I probably should have noted to you all beforehand that Abdul Rahman Jamal, who's our program manager and pretty much does everything for Baghdad Business School, is on the call from Baghdad. I'm in DC right now. I just got back a couple weeks ago. So I wanted to also introduce him. Thanks, Anna. Don't worry, audience, this PowerPoint is very short and it is very concise. I'm not going to talk for very long, just so we can have a discussion about, the skills gap, about workforce development, about, human capital, generating human capital for the private sector. But I just wanted to put some things on paper. And just to kind of clarify, Baghdad Business School is the flagship project of the Iraq Fund for Higher Education, and that was in the email. And that is our US-based foundation. I'm just trying to figure out how I switch the slides.
There you are. I got you.
Thank you. Thanks, Anna. BBS is the Baghdad Business School, is the flagship project of IFHE, which is the Iraq Fund for Higher Education, which is a US-based 501c3 with a board, et cetera. So just to show the connection between those two, I and someone else founded this a couple years ago, and it's basically our administrative vehicle for our work in Iraq. The first project of which is Baghdad Business School, which is massive and probably will be our main project for the foreseeable future. So yeah, thanks. And so I wanted to introduce BBS just in terms of the private sector and the context in which you all work. You know, I know that you all are usually on these calls because I'm on them too, seeking advice and direction to help grow your businesses from US officials and Iraqi officials. I mean, we have Matt on today. And this is a little bit different, but similar. I think of this as just like a bottom-up approach to how the private sector companies and firms such as yourselves can grow in Iraq. And what I heard, I worked at the American University of Iraq in Sulaymaniyah for 10 years and left a couple years ago to do this project. And what I heard, the reason for BBS is because I listened to banks, accounting firms, investment firms, oil and gas, every sector within the private sector. I listened to them for 10 years say, we have jobs for Iraqi youth and Iraqis, but we cannot hire them because of three main reasons and skill gaps. And I will say, this is a very remedial foundational program. It's really to educate Iraqi youth to get entry-level jobs at your companies in the private sector. We of course hope to grow and expand, but right now it's very basic. It's a bridge program. So BBS is the result of those conversations and that research and that work that I did for 10 years. So I and some of my colleagues designed this program to address what I heard from the sector was the skill gap. So it's a very market-driven program, kind of top down, but it also looks at what Iraqi youth have and don't have and seeks to fill that. So it's kind of a bottom-up, top-down approach. And as you see in this slide, what I heard from the private sector was English, English, English. Please teach these young people English. And after that, kind of soft or professional skills, anything from research to answering emails, writing emails, to communication, teamwork, leadership, etc. And then third was business skills. Please teach them just the basics about business, econ, finance, accounting, marketing. So that is what we did. And we put together this curriculum, which we implemented last year. If we could just move to the next slide. Thank you very much. I'm sorry if I'm not figuring out how to do that. So this is, sorry, Anna?
All set.
Okay, thanks. So this is the program we came up with. We implemented it last year in October 2020. It is grant certificate. It has these three programs, and then it has career services at the end. We place all of our students and graduates in 3-month internships at the end of the program. And then the bottom is the more kind of institutional aspects about financial support, institutional partnerships, applying for accreditation. And those are all things that are ongoing right now as we institutionalize and grow in our second year. Oh yeah, if we could just move to the next slide. Thank you. This slide is just details about the curriculum. And I don't expect everyone to read all of this right now, but just briefly, what we designed was, again, based on what we heard from private sector firms. So it's heavy on the English and soft skills, 6 months of general English and then professional English. Then moving on to business fundamentals, which is kind of like an introduction to business class at an undergraduate institution. And throughout this entire program, we have professional development lectures. Some people on this call may have actually given one. We have a leader from the private sector come each week to talk to students. They do their 40-hour Microsoft report writing presentations, leadership, teamwork. And of course, all of this is really focused on critical thinking, analytical thinking, preparing them to be young professionals and succeed in the international and local private sector. And then again, at the end, what we're doing right now is placing them in internships. If we could move to the next slide, thanks. So this is just kind of a summary of BBS at a glance. Innovative, results-oriented. We really focused on high quality international standards, but tailored to Iraq. And this is reflected also in our faculty and staff. I mean, we bring faculty, English language business, who have experience in the private sector teaching, as well as in Iraq, because it's a very different academic and private sector business setting, as you all probably know very well there. So we want to make sure we're teaching them, preparing them for the world, the region, but also to work in Iraq. If we could, move to the next slide, thanks. Oh, can you all hear me? Oh, sorry.
I think maybe
yeah.
there's challenges with the slide.
Oh, okay, no worries. I mean, I know the rest of the presentation, so I can just keep kind of talking. So that's the concept and the design in general. Where we are now, briefly, our first class is finishing their last module in accounting and finance tomorrow. Then they will be presenting their business plans, their pitch decks next week. They do a business plan with a small group. And then they will move into their internships. And most of them are already in internships right now. So they're doing both the program and working, at part-time positions. So we just finished recruiting for our second class, and they will start on October 31st. So a lot going on right now, offboarding the first class, inboarding the second, and all of our graduates will work at private sector companies. So that is the idea. I mean, I will say right now, again, it's very basic. It's a one-year program. By year 3, which is the 2022-2023 year, we are going for a high diploma accreditation. It will be a 2-year program. 2025 is the goal for building the MBA program, which we are doing with the American University of Sharjah. And so through accreditation, through these institutional partnerships, and through funding, and also identifying a land and building by year 3, we'll build into this MBA program. And I mean, one of our main ways of building institutionally is with the private sector. So for example, through mentorship, all of our students had a mentor from the private sector. Number 2, internships. I mean, we would welcome the opportunity to work with you all with the private sector on more companies for our students to intern. Some of them are now working at Miswag, Al Saria, a lot of the local startups, business development firms. And then in the future, also institutional support. A lot of people, actually, some of the people on this call support BBS through scholarships. We name after companies and et cetera. So I think finally, we would really welcome the opportunity if you all have employees that maybe need to improve their English, their soft skills, their business skills. You can send them to BBS, and we can, if they have a part-time schedule, we can train them and send them back. So I think there are a lot of ways. I mean, when you look at obviously great institutions in the United States and around the world, educational institutions, they only grow, right, through cooperations with the private sector. And, we, I think, very carefully designed this program. And like, as Lori will discuss with their CDCs, the Career Development Centers, very kind of carefully designed these programs to support the private sector and prepare Iraqi youth to support the private sector and to address the skill gap. So yeah, thank you all very much. And I'll kick it over to Lori. I think our projects are very much aligned in different kind of sectors, but yeah, so thank you all very much.
Thanks, Christine. And I'll just go ahead and jump in. So I'm Lori Mason. I have the opportunity to oversee programs that are implemented by IREX, but funded by the U.S. Embassy in Iraq. And we've been working around these issues for about 10 years now, with the primary overarching goal of improving both the quality and the relevance of higher education. So our goal is to work in really strengthening the institutions, the ministries of higher education and the universities themselves, to be able to prepare youth with relevant work-ready skills, confidence, and a mindset to want to go to private sector jobs and to understand the differences between working in private sector as opposed to public sector. We've established and we continue to enhance career support services. And we also work to equip Iraqi faculty with hands-on applied teaching methods. We work to update curriculum so it fosters global competencies and advance research and development, among other things that are aligned to private sector. I just want to echo what Christine shared, that, you know, for real, you know, systemic, sustained change to take place, it'll take all sectors, groups like us, private sector, government, educational institutions, all working together for economic development and really equip Iraqi youth to succeed and to see Iraq grow and continue to be a stable place for us all to be able to invest. In doing so, as we started these programs in 2011, we started with this initiative in career development centers. Stanley will share a little bit more about those, but when we began, we knew it was important, but it was brand new and the discussion was really just beginning at that time. And there was no data. And so we wanted to ensure that what we offered was really mapped to market need. Because we couldn't find a lot at the time, we actually conducted a labor market assessment in 2016 in partnership with the career centers, where we interviewed over 500 companies to try to understand, you know, what are the key issues? Where are gaps? Where's the higher education sector misaligned to what market needs? What are the skills that are missing in graduates? I mean, we use that labor market assessment to then chart steps forward in remaining areas of the program. We have those mapped in ways that cover very long-term goals that include system-wide change, more medium-range goals that are around like a program or a department, and then of course immediate short-term goals that work with skills development for youth through the career centers. Just to give a little bit of a flavor of the type of things that we've been working on, you know, we also heard, like Christine, that English language is by far one of the biggest gaps. So to address that system-wide, one of the things that we've been doing is working with universities to establish English language centers. We have 6 so far in country that provide both academic English, but also business English training for students, and eventually we'll move into the community. We're also working with the ministry to develop a national strategy that would improve English language instruction for non-English majors. We've moved also into the creation of new programs so that higher education offerings are more aligned to where industry has said there are real gaps in terms of preparation. An example of creation of new programs would be the start of an automotive technology program. There was a huge gap in that sector, and so we were able to work with a polytechnic to establish that. In the future, we anticipate this year to launch something around a version of an MBA in international banking and finance, as well as a 4-year program in cybersecurity, because we know there's nothing right now in the higher education sector that's really preparing youth with the skills that are needed to move successfully into those areas. We've also created extension models similar to like a US extension program for skills development and professional development for employees. Those are typically accredited with a US accrediting organization. An example would be concrete inspectors that it's accredited with the American Concrete Institute, because that was a gap that we did hear from industries in that sector saying that we can't really find anyone with the skill set we need in Iraq to address some of these issues. Another area where we've been working for a while, and we're really excited about this for the potential to really create a bridge of collaboration that helps to make actual change. But we've established an industry advisory board, in Baghdad, where we have a high-level advising board that works directly with the Ministry of Higher Education. And they give in real time feedback on, what programs are missing, what are the skills that are, most lacking in graduates coming out of the higher education system. A number of products have come out of that initiative, including the creation of a graduate competency matrix, where industry has said these are the core competencies that we really need universities to be working toward establishing. Now, those are very, very long-term initiatives. They're not going to be fast. They are definitely not easy, but for system-wide change, those are some initial areas that we've been working toward. One thing I will mention is that in all of our programming, we work to improve faculty capacity to be able to use hands-on applied teaching strategies, and also to develop curriculum that fosters more of a global competency in higher order thinking, critical thinking, and problem solving. And that's a core of all of the programs that we work on with the universities. Now, as I mentioned, those are longer term areas. Those are things that are geared towards system-wide change. Stanley will share a little bit more about what we're doing with career development centers that work on directly addressing the skills gap with youth as well. So Stanley.
Great, thank you very much, Lori, and Steve and Anna, thank you for having us as part of the conversation today. And if we could go ahead and move to the next slide. So as Lori mentioned, IREX works closely with career development centers across Iraq, both at public and private institutions, to prepare youth with the confidence, relevant skills, and know-how to enter the workforce. We've developed and refined a number of toolkits and training modules over the years that we've shared with career development centers, both via in-person and remote training sessions. And we always take a very hands-on approach to keeping topics relevant. We work closely with the career development centers across universities to get their own feedback on what is both relevant and needed in terms of their training needs. And then we also recognize that many of the career development center staff themselves are experts, so we invite them to co-facilitate trainings, or similar to what Christine mentioned, we also often invite industry partners in to facilitate trainings with the career centers. So this slide just gives you an example of the depth and breadth of the work that we do with career centers across Iraq. For example, last year, we hosted a career preparation academy for over 500 youth across universities in Iraq, where we did a 2-month series of professional development sessions. Youth were trained in how to prepare for a job interview. We did a resume CV writing skills session, an online professional development session, including LinkedIn profiles, and then also had guests from industry talk about skills development and entering different career paths. In addition, we have worked with over 100 different industry partners on student internships over the years. We launched a national level internship program in 2019 that was still in person. We've pivoted to virtual internships over the past 2 years, and I'll speak a bit more about that later. And finally, we work very, very closely, as you can see, with industry partners across the board on other projects, working with CDCs to host career fairs at their institutions, doing innovation or design day type activities where students solve real world problems for industry partners, and then doing various specific types of training, as Lori already mentioned. And if we could go to the next slide, please. So last year, IREX worked together with ID Insight, which is a global advisory, data analytics, and research organization, to conduct an independent evaluation of the impact of career services in Iraq. And we did this because, not only has IREX worked with career centers in Iraq for about 10 years, but there's scant evidence around the world actually about the impact of career services on student employability, and even more so in Iraq. So we did this quasi-experimental study together with ID Insight that showed truly that what we found is that there is true impact of the Career Development Center's work. Through surveys with over 500 graduates from across Baghdad, Basra, Mosul, and Erbil governorates, and interviews with a number of stakeholders across the board, we learned that graduates who use career services are more likely to be employed than those who don't use career services. And why is that? It's because these youth are more prepared with the skills that they gain through workshops, through internships, and through other hands-on professional development experiences that they gain outside of the classroom. We also learned that youth who use career services are less likely to use WASTA to gain a job, but instead, many of these youth build the pathways and the connections to employment through either their internship experiences, through their training that they do through the career development centers, and through other activities with potential employers. One other interesting point that we found that we wanted to highlight with you was, although last year ILO's estimates were about 25% youth unemployment in Iraq, our study actually showed that among those youth surveyed, it was a much higher number, which was about 70%. And that just points all the more to the necessity to work together with partners like you on the call to promote youth employment and youth skills development in Iraq. You can see finally on this slide that recent graduates themselves note high demand for additional training. And I think this fits in very well with both what Christine and Lori were mentioning in areas including critical thinking, English, verbal skills, and computer skills. And this comes up again and again. We have a link to the full evaluation that was done last year here, and I believe this will be shared with individuals on the call afterward as well. And next slide, please. And so we rounded out the evaluation by speaking to company partners who hire from career centers. And here's just a few brief highlights of what they've said. Progress with career centers is evidenced as such. We've heard a lot about the importance of internships already today. The employers that we spoke to noted that graduates with internship experience have better communication skills, better professional skills, and they know what to expect in an office culture. And related, we also have heard from employers that youth who have done internships know what kind of questions to ask when going into a job interview. And that's also key, know how to conduct themselves professionally when going into a job interview. And as such, they've noted a very large difference between youth who participate in career development center activities and those who do not participate. And employers also prioritize applicants with practical skills that come from professional development activities. These include soft skills, management, professional email etiquette, and then of course, again, computer proficiency, communication, taking initiative, and English. We take these comments from employers into account in our real-time training with career development centers. And I have just one additional slide. So I mentioned that IREX works on internships and both virtual and in person. Over the past 2 years, what we've done is we've pivoted to what we call micro internship programming. This is something that was introduced last year in the United States as well. And micro internships are an experience where a young person can do a 2 to 4 week professional assignment for a company. And this last year was done completely online due to COVID. This year we did have a hybrid model. So some were done online, a few were done in person using strict COVID protocols. And this is just some very, very recent data. We do a lot of monitoring and evaluation with our employers with whom we partner. And just this month, employers who are involved in our micro internship program in the Kurdistan region shared with us that overall, it was a fantastic program. We had 750 youth involved in our micro internship program just this past summer and early fall. Employers noted that students would benefit from more preparation for the workforce in the areas that you can see mentioned on this slide. And these are some of the areas that come up again and again. I will also mention that in our own monitoring and evaluation efforts, from our recent micro internship program, we had 93% of students who were involved said that they gained new skills through their micro internship program, and 97% of the students involved said that they would absolutely recommend such a professional development experience to their peers. So that really points to how even a 2 to 4 week program can have a huge professional impact on youth. We look forward to going back to our fuller, longer internship program with company partners again soon, and we'll stay optimistic that that will happen fairly soon. So I'd like to turn it back to Lori to finish out our part of the presentation.
So I think just from here, what I would just like to share is similar to what Christine had said as well, that we very much want to align programs that are offered with what industry needs. But we really want to work closely with you to be able to do that. And so there are a few areas listed here that we'd welcome collaboration, whether it's hosting interns or serving on an advisory board. But we want to hear as much as we can from industry so we can make sure that we're mapping our programs to meet the need of industry. And on that, I just want to say again, thank you for allowing us to be here. And I'll turn it over to Matt.
All right, well, thank you. And I have to say, first of all, Steve and Anna, thank you for putting this together. I think it's long overdue. And then, of course, unlike Christine, Stanley, and Lori, I don't have PowerPoint. So, usually you think the government is the one who's going to be putting up the slides and promoting and reading off of them. But I hope that was all very informative for you. So I'm going to sound like the bureaucrat first and kind of go through some things and how the US government is trying to support, this basically helping Iraqi youth get to jobs. And really that's through working with Iraqi universities. Now, I can say that there's been a smattering of things. So like, I know many people usually think that the US government's very well coordinated and they're all moving lockstep. That's not always the case. But in this instance, when you're looking at who's engaging with Iraq's universities, you're primarily looking at the State Department and USAID. And I would just like to point out, first of all, that some of our programs have been very long running. And I think one of the hidden gems is actually one that the State Department funds through the Commercial Law Development Program, which is the VISMUT program, really to help train Iraqis in contract law, right? And that's a 9-month program. It's something that the students have to compete in. I wish I had statistics that could say, since this has been done since 2012, how many of them have gone on to the private sector. That I don't have, but it's something that I'm trying to look into, and maybe if I can give it back to Steve and Anna, we can pass this along, because I think that's important for everyone that's a member of the US-Iraq Business Council. But other types of things where we have engaged, since 2017, we've now provided around 17.5 million in assistance to non-state, not-for-profit American-style institutions of higher learning in Iraq. Due to universities that have been devastated by ISIS, we've allocated 1.2 million, what we're calling to the Liberated Universities Initiative, primarily for universities in Nineveh and other provinces that were devastated by ISIS. Of course, very active in Iraq, we have the Higher Education Partnership Program, the Fulbright Program, the Iraqi Young Leaders Exchange Program. Of course, we haven't been able to do that due to the pandemic. But there you would take people at the undergraduate, high school, and junior high, basically, to bring them over to the United States for different programs. And it was always a joy to have them here. And the English Access to Micro Scholarship Program. So I would say, like, these types of things, you have to look at where is the US actually going in terms of that. Some of these obviously are grants, right? So these are going to be posted. The notice of opportunities will be posted at the website that you need to see. And others of these are more directly worked out with the Iraqi government. Usually there is a need where they will come to us to say, this is, we would like a change, and we try and negotiate and work that out to help. And actually, I forgot, there's one other thing that I forgot to say with the Commercial Law Development Program. Due to the sister city agreement between Houston and Basra, three Southern universities actually engaged us to help them change their curricula for project management within oil and gas. So with the University of Houston, the Commercial Law Development Program kind of facilitated discussions between 3 Iraqi universities, the University of Basra, the University of Basra Oil and Gas, and Southern Technical University, with the Oil Training Institute, a part of the Ministry of Oil, to really help their workers get, an updated sense of how oil and gas companies are doing work around the globe. So that was a very specific instance. So not always the case, and I am sure in terms of have we done more vocational work? If we go back from 2003 forward, yes, there were lots of times where we worked with vocational schools. I know my colleagues at IREX very well, and how many times we've looked at what can we do to work together. So in this way, the U.S. government does try and help. So you can look at us as a facilitator, right? We engage with the Iraqi government in some cases. In other cases, we're engaging with organizations such as these to really help close that gap. So I will just say that Christine, Lori, and Stanley do a much better job of getting into those details because they're the ones doing the work. For me, what we're looking at is more at an aggregated level, but I would be happy to try and discuss and find out more about these if for some reason members of this body just did not know or didn't have access to what the U.S. government is doing in Iraq. But I thought I would at least give that overview because I can't get into the details that they did. I thought they did an excellent job. So Steve, should I turn it back over to you?
Actually, I'm going to have Anna jump in, but thank you to all of our panelists. And all of your commentary was very interesting, I would say. And I think, and apologies, I think Anna may be having some technical issues. So she's working through these this morning. Nothing like the Monday morning cobwebs on the technical side. But I mean, I really found, in my own mind, I found it very interesting. All 3 of you talked, there was so many similar threads. And Matt, you summed it up well to hear kind of what the USG's perspective and where the resources and direction have been put. But it was really interesting to hear, from our first 2 commentators and first 2 organizations and IREX with both Lori and Stanley, the perspective on, trying to meet the market needs and, try to bring, some progress in those areas. And I thought that was very interesting how much of what you're doing is tailored to that, to the level of, Lori, you mentioned, a concrete inspector, which when you think about it, not to be flip, but I mean, it's so foundational. And it is, if you're not getting that right, I mean, just think of the hazards of that. So that's such an important position to fill. So the idea that you're, looking to have a program that addresses that gap is wonderful. And then addressing it in the automotive space. And I'm sure you could probably, you and Stanley and Christine and others on here representing the companies could probably go on and on with other areas that you're looking to address. But those overarching themes, though, that you are looking to identify those areas where you need that kind of specialist is really wonderful. And I think that's so important. But let me go back. Let me try Anna one more time to see. Anna, are you with us? I see you talking, but we're not hearing you. So maybe try to join by your phone would be my suggestion. But I see, so I want to first go, we do want to open it up, and I see our friend Pierce Drysdale with his virtual hand raised. So Pierce, we're going to go to you to get us started off with the questions and comments here. Pierce?
Thanks so much, Steve and Anna, for yet another excellent and very timely webinar. I'm going to, and thank you to all of the speakers, for all of whom I know are extremely well informed, so having spent a lot of time working on Iraq and bringing some excellent perspectives and information. And I mean, I think I'll start with a disclosure that I'm speaking as an active supporter of BBS. In fact, I think we work now with 6 interns from Christine's program, and this morning I was working on a contract to take on full-time one of them, and can report that they really are excellent. And I would encourage anybody who is looking for enthusiastic, bright, young, English-speaking interns or potential employees to contact Christine in the same way that I did. The next thing is maybe a comment, and is that really the difference between the available young, bright, English-speaking private sector directed potential employees now compared to when a number of us started in Iraq so many years ago is chalk and cheese. There has been so much progress with the education establishments that have been set up across the country, and you see that there is a group of highly motivated, very bright, very entrepreneurial, and very engaged with all the skills that our speakers have been talking about today, about critical thinking and professionalism and enthusiasm for the private sector. They are out there now. Maybe in not huge numbers, but they are there, and it's such a difference to to what I think perhaps we all experienced so many years ago. I'm going to end with a question. And I'm going to give Christine a bit of a softball question, and say, so much progress has been made with the BBS already. Where could you talk a little bit more about where you hope it to be 5-10 years hence? I know that with your enthusiasm, it can only be a success.
Thank you, Piers. Yeah, as I said, right now, BBS is a 1-year program. It's very basic. It's remedial. Every year, and kind of like, Lori was saying about what they're looking to do with the MBA. I mean, every year we are looking to enhance, develop, and expand the curriculum based on feedback from the private sector and based on feedback from our graduates. I mean, our first class is about to finish. After every course, after every semester, as IREX does, we do these surveys, we get their feedback, and using that, we will grow. Also, after they're placed in their internships, and as IREX did, this study is really great, which I recommend highly. We will look to their employers and say, what else did they need? What did they lack? What else can we do? And I mean, some of the feedback we've already gotten from companies based on their looking at our current curriculum. So this year will remain a 1-year program, but we will add courses in design thinking, in business ethics, in fintech. I mean, one of the feedback, I'll just give a small example, is a bunch of people looked at our curriculum from the Global Business School Network, from Georgetown, from AU Sharjah, and said, you need to add more IT. So we'll add more IT. So every year we will grow according to the market and according to what companies want. So kind of more qualitatively, that's how we will grow. More specifically, practically, we have to be accredited and we have to institutionalize to be sustainable and grow. So we are applying right now for a high diploma license from the Ministry of Higher Education. This is somewhere in between a BA and an MBA. So it's the first step. This will take us probably a year. I'm sure many of you may be on this call. Some of you are familiar with the bureaucracy of the Iraqi government. From a private sector perspective, the education sector is the same. So we're working on that now. We hope to have it, well, we plan to have it by, August, September 2022. In addition, so that will give us the high diploma. After we have our first graduating class, we will apply for the license for the MBA. So the ultimate goal in all of this is to maintain our one-year program, go for the high diploma, and then the MBA. I guess a second kind of note is, I think you all probably noticed from, what Lori and Stanley were saying, and I said, there's a massive need for English language education in Iraq. There is not one quality English language institution in Baghdad. I mean, it's incredible. Everyone talks about it. And I think that there's a major opportunity here from the top down and the bottom up for us, maybe US government of Iraq, private sector, we in higher education to fill this gap. So I think that's another area where we'd like to grow. So again, institutionalizing, expanding our curriculum, enhancing our governance. And just the last part of this is through institutional partnerships. I mean, right now we're Baghdad Business School. We're not Harvard Business School. And so, but the reality is that top universities will not lend a brand or open a branch in Baghdad and Iraq right now. It's very difficult. When I was at AUIS, we started the Stanford Law Program. That was year 5 or 6 university. So what we're looking at is a very practical, and I don't mean to kind of brush aside American University of Sharjah. It's one of the top business schools in the region. And we will, through a partnership with them, we will grow. And then eventually go back to US and European and other universities and have a trifecta, I hope, MBA program. So yeah, sorry, that's maybe a long answer. But again, institutionalizing through partnerships, through funding, through curriculum and governance growth. Slowly, but surely.
Excellent. Thank you, Christine. I think you all should be able to hear me now.
Yes.
Excellent. We will next turn, I think, Matt Zeiss with Hillwood. I saw your hand earlier. If you have a question, welcome to have you jump in here.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Anna, Christine. Great to see you, and Matt. I just had a quick question. This sounds like a program that you all have launched with the Embassy in Baghdad and Baghdad Business School, and congratulations on the significant progress. It's certainly timely for me, as I've just recently participated in a number of interviews as we hire locals to fill our workforce, which currently is at 73% localization. And I think you hit it right on the head, Christine, which is that English is a critical skill. And I would add to that, the translation is also one that we find challenging to fill. My only question, I guess, would be, I understand this program, I think, is focused in Baghdad. Are there plans to expand it to other parts of Iraq to include the Kurdish region? And then the other question I had was, how do companies partner with the school for interns? And what U.S. companies are doing that, and how do U.S. companies become recipients of interns?
Yeah, I mean, as to your first question, it is in our 5-year plan to have at least one branch. That our short-term focus is on ensuring that we institutionalize this campus and the school in Baghdad. I think maybe having dorms in the near future for students to come from other provinces is probably more realistic than opening a campus, though that all depends on kind of whether, if we had a partner come to us and say, we want to build something here, we have land, we have a building, we'll be your financial partner, then fine, we can do that. But right now we're going to focus on growth in Baghdad. And about Kurdistan, I of course worked at AUIS at the American University in Suli, and this project came out of my work there with the private sector and so I mean, I think in Kurdistan, as we all know on this call, has had much more development in terms of English language and higher education than Baghdad and the rest of Iraq. So that's kind of why, we're focusing there. But yeah, I've actually had some of my Kurdish friends say, when are you all coming up to Kurdistan? So maybe sometime in the future. And about the internships, yes. So we basically reach out. We have about 10 companies, startups that we're partnering with right now to place our students. So what we do, I mean, it's informal right now. I mean, what we usually do, we have a list of all of our students with their CVs and their cover letters, and we share it with all the companies, and they look through and they say, we would like to, interview Saba and Ahmed and Zaid, and then we facilitate those interviews and, then again, facilitate the communication process back and forth, suggest stipends, etc. So we really work kind of hand in hand with the companies throughout the interview application process. And what we suggest is a 3-month internship with a minor stipend, if possible, that would ideally move into an employment position. But of course, we can't mandate that. And so I think every year we'll institutionalize that more and more. But yeah, that's basically the process. We are the middle institution between the companies and the students.
Excellent. Thank you, Christine. I think we will next turn to Mr. Zaid Shaban from AUIB. I believe your hand is up for a question. And then
Yes.
I'll have one after you as well. Please go forward.
All right. Okay. First of all, thank you for having me, and I'm very delighted with what I'm hearing. I've been here only from April. I've been in the continuing education business for 15 years. I am from the American University of Beirut. I know, I've worked in the whole GCC, and I've been involved with the USAID, with Fullbridge, with MasterCard Foundation. So I know everything what's happening was in Lebanon, but here in Iraq, the thing that I've been involved in many conferences here, a couple of conferences, and also, I'm not sure how many of you heard about American University of Iraq and Baghdad. So it's a huge university, and one of our strengths that we have now is our English Language Academy and the Continuing Education Institute. So we have all native speakers that we have level 1 to 6, and we have academic success program for newly accepted students, and we have the community education program and corporate training program. But what I want, my questions and what I want to add to this talk is, we're focusing in the private sectors, and based on the latest statistics that I got from the Deputy Minister of Education, he was just visiting us just now. He said that around 500,000, 500,000 students will be entering the university, and the number of university in Iraq in total cannot handle this number. And they will be people who are graduating, and the culture here in Iraq, what I've seen, they want to go to the top university just to go for a governmental work. So the work needs to be done from school. The culture of joining governmental or a public job, this is their culture. So what we are working on in the Continuing Education Institute, what I need your help in, what I need the support of everybody, private, the US Embassy. We're going to have our space, American space here at American University of Iraq, Baghdad. I'm not sure if you heard about it. We had our UNESCO office just opened here on our campus 2 days ago. So the thing is that what needs to be fixed right now, I know what we're doing with the private sector, and the newly graduate students are for a long term, after the first cohort, or maybe after years of it. But what needs to be fixed now are those who are joining the workforce, especially the government, okay, because it's affecting the private sector heavily. They need to be somehow trained, or we need to identify what kind of competencies we need to tackle. So we will be having on the 25th of January a conference. We'll be inviting public and private sectors, and we try to identify what kind of competencies. From my meetings, I know that they need leadership, project management, risk management. These are the 3 competencies that they need for the working professionals that they are working in the government now. And of course, with the English language program. So we did train the Central Bank of Iraq, we did train the Trade Bank of Iraq, we have Sharia, we have Zain project now together. So what I'm saying is that the focus of closing the gap between the market need and the higher education / vocation and evocation institution need also to be coming along with fixing what's happening now in the government, because they are the decision makers. What Christine said, that the bureaucracy of getting a license. So you have the rules that they have. It's like I cannot how you can stand it. It's very difficult to. So we need to fix the mind of the decision. We need to help so they can contribute to the decision of having this new intake of the graduate to be able to perform. So we can reach out in the American University of Iraq. We need places. I've been, we are welcome all to visit our campus and see the premises that we have, so they can check. And I totally agree for accreditation. I'm going to Las Vegas this beginning of this month. I'm joining the conference of Accrediting Council for Continuing Education and Training. The asset for vocational and training for it's an institutional accreditation for continuing education and training. So I got it for $3 grand for American University of Beirut. I'm trying to get it here, the same for Baghdad. But it's just like focusing on the private sector is not the solution of closing this gap. This is what I would just want to contribute.
If I might just jump in, just seeing that we are getting close to time now, and want to leave time for both all of our panelists to offer some comments. It sounds like this would be a fantastic opportunity for all of our expert speakers here to collaborate on some ideas going forward, both with IREX, our colleagues with the Baghdad Business School, and I'm sure Matt at State can lend some insights as well. But just in the interest of time, I'd love to go to each of our speakers, perhaps first starting with Lori and Stanley with our IREX to offer their reactions, and we can go around. And perhaps I might have one more question before we close it out here, but please go. Welcome, Lori.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for being here. And just the more that we can come together and hear a little bit more about the needs that you have, the experiences that you have, particularly if you're trying to connect with the University Career Center, anything that we can hear from you that can help better improve the services that we're offering and the work being done with universities it's good. And so we would just welcome more discussion, more input from the industry around ways that we can help strengthen the institutions that we work with. And just want to say a huge thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lori. Stanley.
Thanks, Anna. And I'll just tag on to Lori by saying that, echoing that, we work with a network of universities literally all across Federal Iraq and Kurdistan region. If you're looking for youth from different parts, please come our way. We can help to facilitate those connections. And we welcome your input into curricula, into training, into all of the initiatives that we're working on. Thank you for being a part of the call today.
Yeah, I would just echo what Lori and Stanley say and say we really, I know, from the CBCs and BBS, we would really like to work more closely with the private sector. We have a lot of experience doing, private trainings, tailored trainings, tailoring our current programs to address your needs. And I think, there's such an important thing going on with the undergraduate institutions, AUIS, AUIB, one avenue for closing the skill gap. But, then on the other hand, we have tens of thousands of graduates, every year from public universities that also need to be prepared for the workforce. I just will say one quick thing in Iraq. I think the biggest challenge, I don't want to say crisis, but the biggest challenge, when you look at the demography with the youth bulge, when you look at the bloated government sector. I mean, the government cannot hire any of the current graduates. I mean, oil prices went up a little bit, but it's not sustainable with the youth bulge. And then when you look at unemployment and the skill gap, how few students and Iraqi youth are prepared, even with basic computer skills. I mean, literally the only solution for this is to fill this skill gap and do training, whether that's 6 months, a year, 2 years. I mean, this is the only solution to a coming challenge in Iraq that can only be solved if we all work together, I think. And, I know you all are coming from the private sector. This, the private sector is stunted by a lack of human capital. And so, we can only work together to address this, I think. And just final point, there needs to be a mindset shift among the youth. I agree. I mean, one thing I've definitely seen, and I'm sure others have, Iraqi youth, because of the past, 18 years or however many years, 20, 30 years, there's definitely a massive sector of youth that still want to work for the government. But there are a lot of youth that are looking for something new, and they're desperate to learn English and learn new skills and be a productive, like every student we interviewed at BBS said, I will never work for the government and I want to work in the private sector and I want to work all day. I mean, again, this is still a small constituency, but I think it's growing. And so that, taken alongside this challenge of demography and government sector and the private sector deficit, I think means that there's a solution. And, I think we're working on that, toward that solution. So it would be great to work with you all. Anyway, sorry, that was way too long, but go ahead, Matt.
Thank you, Lori.
That's okay, Christine. Just steal my thunder. It's fine. Because I was actually going to mention, I put down a few notes. I said, I didn't mention the demographics and the youth bulge, which definitely, that's something that we're seeing, right? So as someone that focuses on economics in Iraq, we look at that and the government cannot continue with its status policies. There's just no way. It's not like one of the Gulf countries. So, this is why US policy is looking at what can we do to make the state institutions and the government efficient and effective, but also allow the flourishing of a private sector, right? There's no other way for Iraq to advance because the government cannot do it all. So the US government, as we look at our assistance dollars, we're going to look at how do we invest in Iraqi youth, how to give them the opportunities. So again, I mentioned a lot of aggregates, but the thing being is we're there to try and help build institutions. This is why we work so much with IREX. This is why we put out these NOFOs for that culture change and to help prepare, because we're looking ahead and we see that problem. And the only way to do it is for the Iraqi government, hopefully they can restart their scholarship programs again. But then aside of that is what can the US government do? What can the private sector do? And how do we move ahead for a better Iraq?
Well, thank you, and Matt. I think you really put a fine point on it to close us out here. And it's very clear that IREX and our members, Stanley and Lori, as well as our member with the Iraq Fund for Higher Education and Christine's Baghdad Business School, they're really thinking creatively about how to close this skills gap in midst of many evolving challenges. And really in that mission of thinking creatively, I would really like to challenge and put to our members on the line, how can your company think creatively about getting more involved with these really essential tools to close the skills gap and bring the workforce education to where it needs to be for Iraq's future economy. And so with that, I really do want to give a resounding thanks to our colleagues in the State Department, at IREX, and at the Baghdad Business School for offering their insights today. And please allow the U.S. Iraq Business Council to continue to be that convener and connector. And please really welcome everyone's feedback on today's program, and really happy to make any connections as follow-ons to our colleagues in these important institutions so we can be supportive to your mission. So with that, thank you everyone for being with us today. And we look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks very
Thanks,
much.
everyone. Have a great day. Thanks for being with
you.
us.
Thank you.